Okay, well, we are going to get started here. I'm going to introduce both of our panelists today and tell you a little bit more about them, and then we'll go over some questions, and then we'll open it up at the end for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions as we're going, please feel free to put them here in the chat or the Q&A box, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of this session. Thank you all so much for joining our internship panel, Making the Most of Your Internship. I'm so thrilled to introduce Colleen Harmon from the Heritage Foundation and Morgan Rako with College to Congress. Both women are good friends of mine, and I've loved getting to work with over the years. So I'm personally really excited about this session and getting to talk with them. So a little bit about Colleen. She graduated from Christendom College. For any of our women on today from that chapter, she graduated with a bachelor's degree in English language and literature. In the fall of 2013, Colleen interned in development as part of the Young Leaders program that she now runs. Before joining Heritage, she was the director of career development at her alma mater and an executive assistant scheduler to a member of Congress from Pennsylvania. Colleen has been selected as a Leonine Fellow at the Catholic Information Center and a Public Policy Fellow at the Fund for American Studies. She's pursuing a master's degree at the Van Andel School of Government of Hillsdale College and resides in Washington, D.C. And then Morgan is joining us from College to Congress, where she is the Chief Operating Officer. But before College to Congress, she worked her way up through Congressman Mike Turner's office from Ohio, where she started out as a staff assistant and worked her way up to communications director. Morgan moved from Columbus, Ohio to DC to attend American University, where I know we have some women joining from today, where she studied communications, law, economics, and government, and minored in political science. So both of these women have lots of experience of managing interns, being interns themselves. So they're going to be sharing a lot from their personal experiences and hoping to give you guys the skill sets to excel in your own internships. So we'll get started with, when applying to an internship, what should I include on my application to stand out?
Great question. For me, I think one of the biggest things is following the instructions for each office's application. They don't like it when they have a specific process on their website, and instead you're just emailing your resume to somebody. I would also make sure your resume is to one page only, and always save it as a PDF, not a Word document or a Pages document. You want to make sure people are able to open it. Keep in mind, every resume gets a couple seconds look to see if it's worth reading through. So make sure yours is to the point, clear, clean, specific, no typos, and easy to read.
Hi, great to see everyone here. So pleased to see some familiar names in the chat, and really thrilled to be joining the panel today. So thank you so much, Catherine, for inviting me. So when you're applying to your internship, what I would make sure that you do is, first of all, apply to a lot of different internships. I think that that's a great way to diversify your portfolio, but don't just rapid fire them out into the universe. Make sure that you are yourself aligned with the mission or with what that particular thing does. And that goes for congressional offices as well. I think sometimes it's easy to have an application out to your congressman, and they certainly should be. But when you want to work in public policy and in Washington, D.C., who you work for matters. And so you're taking on an internship, but you're also building on your own brand. It actually kind of looks sketchy when you drop from your resume an internship experience. So be thoughtful as you approach those different things. It's not like those things can't happen or be explained in an interview, but it's really important that you choose and have the confidence to choose those organizations that you think that you align with in a belief system, but also that you can bring great skills and abilities to the table to do. So choose carefully, but also apply a lot of places so that you have a little bit more choice when you are inevitably given offers. What I look for people to include in their application materials is everything that I asked for. I think that it's really important to review what requirements there are on the website and make sure that you get those things in on time if you can, or to email the program coordinator and say, hey, having a little bit of difficulty getting this piece, how can I make sure it gets to you in a particular amount of time? That to me indicates great professionalism, attention to detail, and also that you've read the instructions and understand them. Nothing makes me unfortunately reject an intern more than not having all the materials that I asked for on our application, because they are an important component of our search. And even if you're the best candidate in the pool, often if you don't have all of the materials that are being looked for, you won't even be considered. So I would make sure you do those things.
Great. Yeah, and you both touched on kind of the resume portion. What is it that you guys are like? Is there anything in particular that you always look for? That might be different. So Morgan, on a Hill internship, is there something you are looking for when hiring an intern?
That's a great question. I think I can kind of speak to this in two different ways. For College to Congress, we look through, for this summer, we had nearly 800 applicants for 10 internship positions that we're going to be able to help financially support and professionally develop these young professionals. For over this summer, we're helping them get internships on Capitol Hill. Like you alluded to in a previous life, I was also the staff assistant and the intern coordinator in the office I was working in. So I hired and managed all of our interns there as well. I think that in what I look for someone who has shown some sort of interest in political work. So have you volunteered on a campaign? Have you, whether that's knocking on doors or making phone calls for a candidate you are really supportive of? Have you been involved in your campus chapter of Young Republicans or Young Democrats? Have you done anything with voter registration? I know there's a ton of activism days on campuses where you can just do a voter registration drive on campus. I always look for something like that shows me that you're interested in this. You're going to learn a lot from this experience. It's a pathway you're interested in pursuing, and which to me means you're going to make the most out of your internship, and I'm going to see the biggest return on investment in you.
Okay. Yeah, and I know when I oversaw the intern program on the Hill, also location. So for when I worked for a California member, we looked for applications that maybe came from California. Not that was always the deciding factor, but that definitely helps when applying to congressional internships.
Absolutely.
Colleen, what do you look for when you get applicants for a Heritage Foundation?
Yeah, so the Heritage investment in the Young Leaders program has gone back since really the beginning of our organization, but certainly ramped up in the early 2000s when we created a formal program here at the Heritage Foundation. And it's a great test case of all the different jobs there are in the conservative movement, I think, or in politics in general, because we hire in our development and fundraising space, in our communications department, in research, in foreign economic and domestic policy, in trade policy, across the board. Pretty much every job that there is, finance and accounting, workplace solutions, there's an internship opportunity there. So it's really given me the chance to look at all of these different resumes and really place people according to their individual needs and talents. I think sometimes it's a little bit of a misnomer that in politics, you have to be a policy wonk, you have to be nerdy or really passionate about nuclear deterrence or healthcare policy. And there's a place for everyone, including in events and programming, including in member and constituent services responses. And so if you are passionate about our country and passionate about making things better for everyday Americans, there's a place for you. And so that being said, make sure that your skills, I make sure that their skills are lined up with that individual department. If they're applying to be a digital communications intern, I look at how much information that they've done in social media. If they have any experience in writing posts, maybe they interned on the Hill and worked in the press department. So kind of seeing what things overlap, but it's not always a one-to-one ratio. Some of them, a Middle East intern might speak Arabic and have visited Jordan and done a study abroad in Israel and might just be nail on the head what they're looking for. Whereas someone in development might have had their last job be Chick-fil-A, or they've worked at in a lawn company. And we know that they have great customer service skills and a strong work ethic and are themselves a self-starter and good at handling money. There are a lot of things that come from your resume that, of course, you as the person turning in your resume should highlight and tailor to that particular position. But I think one of the mistakes that sometimes people make is they don't have a self-awareness to kind of say, I'm not ready for this yet, but I want to get my foot in the door. So one of the things that we do in our internship program is an educational programming that goes along with it. So no matter where you are in the building, you're hearing from policy experts, you're hearing from others. So if the organization or the experience that you want as an intern, it should be a test run of your career. One of the best things, and I think we'll get into this later about internships, is that you often find out what you don't want to do. And that's actually a very helpful thing, because you're not heading down this path and then realizing when you're too deep, so to speak, that it's not something that you want to do. And so I think that take the internships that might not seem alive. That mistake I was talking about is that interns will put down, I want to work in the Center for National Defense, but they don't have anything in their resume or academic experience that points to that job. The good news is if you get a great internship, that internship will be like a job. And so think of it as if you were the person accepting your resume and they were to ask you, which is basically what they're asking by posting the job, why would you be good at this position? Don't just rapid fire out resumes. Take the time to write a thoughtful cover letter and tailor your resume in such a way that that hiring manager knows that you've thought about it and you're sort of answering the question for them. It'll more likely get you to the interview process.
Great. And in both of your situations, I'm sure you have applicants that come in that don't get the department they want or the congressional office that they were hoping to get into. How do you still make the most of that opportunity, even if you're maybe not where you were hoping to be?
It's a great question. I think that we have a lot of applicants for College to Congress that think that they want to work for just really big names within the party that they're interested in. So on the Democrat side, a lot of young people really, especially young females, really want to work for AOC. On the Republican side, a lot of people really want to work with Dan Crenshaw or whoever they're seeing a lot of on Fox News. I think that more realistically, we try to set expectations on the front end of you're more likely going to be placed in an office that you have state ties to, firstly. Secondly, you're probably not going to be working for one of the members that's in the fringe of the party, whichever side you fall on. And thirdly, I think that you can get a really valuable internship experience in any office that you are, as to Colleen's point, kind of morally aligned with. And especially on the House side, you can get a lot more experience in policy stuff as an intern, just because there's so much work to be done and fewer staff members. I also think that a lot of folks overlook committee internships. Those are extremely valuable. You're able to, instead of dealing with tours and constituents and phone calls and those sorts of things, a lot of constituent interaction, you're able to focus a lot more on policy. And if that's something that you think you're really interested in, if there's a specific area you're really interested in, I would definitely encourage you to look into applying to committees directly and look at who is on the committees that you're interested in terms of subject matter, and apply to those congressional offices as well. Like I said, anywhere that you have home state ties or you live there for a little bit, you're going to have much higher success than just, oh, well, I saw Ted Cruz the other day on the news, and so I think I would like to work for him.
Yeah, I think Morgan adequately covered being on the Hill. I think that's hugely important. I think sometimes we forget on the Hill that the closer we are to that particular office, the more likely we are to really excel in that position. So your member of Congress, when I interned on the Hill, was from Frederick, Maryland. He was one of the oldest members of Congress. He had given my brother a nomination to the Naval Academy. And so we had some ties to that particular department. He wasn't a member that was, other than for his long standing, particularly well known or particularly powerful. but it was the best experience because the people that we were speaking to on the phone were my neighbors. And it really helped me to better understand Congress as not just sort of this mass answering service, but real people who care about their country, and helped me to kind of have the right frame of reference moving forward. So it really prepared me, I think, in choosing a job later on in Congress to interview well and to better understand the beauty of the American system and what we do as a country, not just attaching ourselves to people, but to the people. So as far as the internship not working out, this happens sometimes. You get yourself into a position and realize that it's not the work that you have to do. And that can be kind of discouraging and difficult because you committed to it. So on the one hand, you have to very much sort of make yourself do it and do it well, having a smile on your face and a cheery attitude, finding those ways in which you can contribute to the department well. But in a way, it's great. You can disconnect yourself emotionally from the work and just get that done, get your work done 9 to 5, and then spend more time networking in the evenings, building friendships, finding out those other things to do. So if you really find that you don't like it, start thinking through why you don't like it. Is it the tasks that you're doing? Is it the organization itself? Is it the whole kind of area that you are working in? Or is it just the people perhaps that you're with? And then figure out a way of what do I like about it? Like really try to think about what particular part of this do I like? Do I not like answering phones because everyone's yelling at me? That's pretty natural. Nobody likes that. But perhaps a part of the job that you do like is the writing, is the policy part of it. So maybe start looking towards journalism opportunities, doing informational interviews with press secretaries or people that work in communications. So I would just take it as an opportunity to sort of write down what is it that you like and start pursuing those things. But the one thing I can say is what you should never do is simply check out of it or make it publicly known that you hate what you're doing. I think that that's the number one mistake that interns make, or to let the quality of their work drop in any way. You have made a commitment and you should follow through with that, but also capitalize on the knowledge that you now have that you really never have to do that again. That's the beauty of internships, is that they're temporary experiences, and try to focus on moving forward into a new position.
Absolutely. And would you say that, I mean, once your foot is in the door, you then even have the opportunity to network with people who maybe are in those areas or that office or that department that you are particularly interested in, even if you're maybe not working there?
I would say absolutely. And, to Colleen's point, never check out, never make it known that you are not interested in being there. You should be able to use your time wherever you're interning to talk to people about, I'm really interested in this, that, or the other. And then the way DC kind of works is somebody knows somebody who knows somebody who is great in that area, right? Like, so, and everyone in this town is very willing to help out. Everyone likes to be asked for their input and any assistance they can give. It makes them feel like they're a little special and important, which everyone likes to feel, especially in DC. So yeah, I think that wherever you are, whether you're happy or not, put a smile on your face, get through it, and use your time there, not as something that you're like, okay, I've made this commitment and now I just have to stick it out. Use that time to build your network and talk to people outside of even just your internship, talk to the people within the office you're working in, to connect you to people outside of the office you're working in. And as you meet more and more people, you can get a better sense of what other people do and what you think you would like to do next in order to have a more happy and productive work environment.
Great. What do you guys look for, or what is always kind of the thing that stands out that makes someone stand out as an amazing intern, a remarkable, reliable, the all-star intern in the class?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the ideal situation, at least for me, when I was interning, and I think a lot of interns feel this way, is I'm not just doing this for fun. I'm not getting paid a lot to do this. I'm doing this because I want to get a job, right? So how do you become one of those, the 52% of people who have interned and are therefore more likely to get the job? The way you do that is attitude. You come in, you put a smile on your face, angry phone calls, you let it roll off your back. You just keep moving, you keep going through it. You don't get upset when you're asked to refill the printer paper. It's important that we're able to print things in a timely and efficient manner. Like, is it the most fun job? No, but we've all had that job. So I think just keeping a good attitude, taking initiative. So if you can anticipate other people's needs, if you're asking for something that you could do to help, if you're saying, hey, I'm really interested in this hearing or this briefing, I would love to go and then write a memo for you to the person whose policy area it is. If you're interested in press, asking the press secretary or communications director if you could take a stab at drafting some social media posts. Take initiative, try to make the most out of your time there. Don't just let the time pass you by as you're sitting at that desk. And then the final thing I would say is flexibility, especially on the Hill, but in DC in general. Your entire day, week, month could change based on the news. There were so many times where I had my boss booked on CNN or MSNBC or Fox, and 10 minutes before he was supposed to be interviewed about Iran, the president tweeted something, and then the entire interview shifts. Right. So I think that's, and similarly, if something big is happening nationally, the phones are going to completely change based on what's going on in the news. So just stay adaptable, be flexible, and try to be value added to the office. I think that's the best advice I can give.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Morgan. I think the value add is really important, an important piece. So make sure you ask a lot of questions, especially within that first 2 to 3 week window in which interns are expected to ask questions, and ask good ones, and make a list, and don't be asking them kind of like intermittently, but asking them all at the same time and making sure that your intern supervisor is aware of that. So when you're coming in, be someone that they want to work with, I think is really the best way to do that. I think sometimes in trying to stand out, interns actually like overcorrect and make themselves sort of like they stand out too much. So relax. Don't worry, they chose you to work with them and they're more than happy to have you there. So I think the important thing is to try to fit into the organization culture, to better align the work that you do to the organization values and understand them, and then to meet deadlines, do excellent work, and make sure that you are always anticipating the needs of your boss. So the interns in my office always help me with our intern selection. And one of the things that they're tasks that are sort of intuitive as they go along, but they have a sense of, oh, Colleen will probably need this, or she always asks for this on Monday at this time. Let's just have it ready for her and on her desk at that time. Or, hey, you didn't get to this today. Can I help with this particular project? Or I know we have a meeting at noon. Do you want me to run up there and see how things are going and make sure we have everything in order? Can I bring something to it? Anticipating the needs of your boss goes a really long way because it helps take some of the work off their plate, and they can actually fully put that on your plate so that you sort of create the work environment and the job description that you want there. And just always be looking for opportunities for leadership, even among other interns. And that might be something as simple as saying like, hey, maybe we should stay for extra 30 minutes today because votes are happening. And one of my intern supervisors mentioned today that there's something that we might need to help with. So always looking for those opportunities to not only assert yourself as someone that is dependable, friendly, good to work with, easygoing, and really good at what they do, but also someone that will take the work of the intern supervisor away in advising the other interns in the best course of action, and looking for ways to manage them as well without becoming bossy, but a great peer to them.
And Colleen brings up such a great point about time kind of being a intern supervisor's most scarce commodity. And I think that not just for intern coordinators, but for most Hill staffers, time is of the essence. So what I always try to tell our interns, and what I always appreciated when I was managing interns, was a rule that I kind of call ask 3, then me. So if you're coming to me with a question, I want you to be able to tell me, hey, I Googled this, looked on congress.gov, I looked on our boss's website, and I still can't figure out our position on X, Y, or Z. I want you to show me that you have tried to find a solution to the problem. before coming to me with the problem. Of course, ask questions in order to get a better understanding of what's expected of you. But in terms of things like, I had an intern one time ask me, she was asked to address some envelopes, and she had never written something to put in the mail. So she had never addressed an envelope before. And she asked me, well, where does the address go? I was like, you can Google that. So ask questions, but ask questions in a way that shows you've put some effort into trying to find the answer on your own.
Yeah, I like that. I think you both touched on it too, but quality work. Anytime that your intern supervisor has to like double and triple check your work and make the smallest little edits, that's also time consuming. And so taking that extra minute, I would rather you turn in quality work than get through tasks super fast, because that also saves time, which is beneficial to your supervisor. So internships are usually thought of as a way to help you prepare for your career. But what if you're in school and you still have no idea what you want to do? Where should you start looking for an internship?
Great question. If you're early on in school, I think that's actually a great time to start interning. You can do stuff that it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm relying on this to be my job in 6 months. It's a great time for you to be able to play a little bit and see what you're most interested in. As Catherine kind of alluded to, my major at American was 4 different things, right? So I was all over the place. I did an internship doing PR for the Cherry Blossom Festival one year. I had already interned on a campaign back home in high school. I wanted to try out different things, see what I was interested in, see what I didn't like so much. I would definitely recommend, especially if you're local in DC, at a DC university, all of the universities in DC have really, really, really great career centers that know all the opportunities that you could be applying for. I would schedule an appointment with someone at the career center of your university and kind of talk about the classes that you're liking the most. And from that conversation, they're going to be able to provide you some options of where you might want to start looking at potential internships. But like I said, the earlier on you are in your, I guess, career trajectory, the more fun you can have and just kind of play with it. Like, oh, that could be fun. Like, did I want a job at the Cherry Blossom Festival? No, but was that a fun spring semester internship? Absolutely. I did that my sophomore year. It was super fun. Would highly recommend. So there's a lot of different things that you can kind of just play with and see what you're interested in, see what you like. Like, I learned from that internship, hey, I'm really good at communications. So when I went to the Hill, I saw, okay, I'm starting out as a staff assistant, press assistant, and then was able to work my way up to communications director, because I wasn't one of those people who was really interested in sitting down and reading the Obamacare bill from start to finish, right? Like, that just wasn't my journey. I was really strong at putting together talking points on repeal and replace, and messaging that to the constituency of the member of Congress I worked for. So I think that every experience you have, you're going to learn a little bit from, and you're going to get more information for yourself on where your interests and strengths really lie.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you've covered it so well. I think one of the other things to do, so I had the opposite experience. I was an English major at a college, Christendom College, that only had at the time 7 majors. So in a way, I had the whole world ahead of me, and also kind of a very narrow window by which people looked at my application and my major. They just thought, oh, she's a good writer. And so I had to sort of prove along the way, not only that the liberal arts education that I received is kind of a Swiss Army knife for a bunch of different things, but also highlight a lot of jobs that I'd had on campus. And I knew that I wanted to head in the direction of politics, and in a way that's sort of easy. You look to Capitol Hill. But I also wanted to make sure that I was choosing the right level of government at which to practice that particular skill. And so I also looked to my state governments and then tried to do local governments as well. So trying to figure out all of the different levels to get a good sense of, if you work in the mayor's office, that might give you some overlap with the police department to better understand criminal justice, or with the prosecutor's office to better understand law, or the mayor's office itself to better understand PR and communications and constituent services. And so I think if you really aren't sure, try to pick an organization or an industry area that has a lot of sort of overlap with different things, so that there's a close proximity for you to better understand kind of within that universe or that ecosystem, what other areas touch it, to better understand those things. I also think you can go to your informational interviews don't necessarily need to be professional. You have aunts and uncles and your parents who have lots of friends who you probably see at family holidays, or can grab a coffee with when they come over to the house, or just set up a meeting or a call to ask them what they do and what they like to do and why they choose the industry that they're in. And then also I would just make a list of what skills you have. That might be easy as things that you like to do. For me on that list, as simple as I love to hold my friends' infant children. I love to make sure that at the end of the day, I have lots of great conversations with people. These might be things that lend towards a particular aspect or a particular job that you would like to have. And then also write out what skills you like to do. Unfortunately, there's some inescapable things. We have to send emails, we have to take meetings. Those things are sort of, no one really loves them, but they are a necessary part of the world that we live in. But if you really can't imagine yourself sitting at a desk for a 9 to 5, maybe start looking for opportunities to become guides in outdoor schools, or thinking about hospitality, or things that would keep you on your feet and moving, or photography, those sorts of things. Starting your own business, start talking to people who run their own things. So don't narrow your scope, but also if you're going to take an internship, make sure that it's one that is sort of, so diverse that there are a lot of different people that you can talk to, whether that be at a big business organization, which interacts with a lot of other things, or at an organization that has overlap in many different job sectors.
Absolutely. I know I had an internship where I was technically marketing and communications, but I got to help with like the development office for some of our fundraising events. And I got to dabble in a little bit of the other offices because, it was a small office. And so that's also, helps you kind of get a sense for what other options are out there. Colleen, you touched on coffees, informational interviews with people. It can be intimidating to reach out to maybe the chief of staff or the vice president of an office, but yet you maybe really are interested in kind of their career trajectory. How would you guys recommend reaching out for coffees with some of the higher ups in the office?
So we actually do like art of the coffee session where we go into a whole hour's worth of conversation about how you can do this well. Really the best way that I recommend, especially with the ability now to see people's basically entire resume online with LinkedIn, anytime you are asking someone for their time, make sure you've taken the time to look at what they've done. Make sure that this is someone who you think that you would benefit from taking their time to have a conversation with. And I would always do a short email, do a quick intro, always attach your resume to the email when you're asking for a coffee or an informational interview. Explain kind of who you are and where you are in your career path. So, hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm a junior at so-and-so college, or I'm graduating this spring and I'm going to be looking for a job on the Hill and would love to talk. Like, let people know where you're at in network building, just so they have a better understanding of priority of where you're looking for and how timely it is in terms of you having to start paying your bills. I would definitely say that from the LinkedIn dive you do, I would try to find one mutual connection. So maybe that person is in the same sorority as you. Maybe that person went to the same university as you. Maybe that person grew up in the same state as you. Any of those sorts of things, throw that in there, that you notice this connection, and would love to meet with them to chat more about their career, and how they've gotten to where they are today. Like I said, this is a town where people want to help you. I just think showing that you've put in a little bit of effort to look into who this person is before asking for their time goes such a long way between you getting a response and not. And also, with that being said, the worst thing that's going to happen is they don't respond to you, or they say, hey, I'm super busy, can't really make this happen right now. It's not a big deal. That's okay. Shoot your shot, go for it. No one's going to be upset that you asked them to get coffee.
Yeah.
I would simply add to that, don't be afraid to ask. I think one of the best ways to do that is to just kind of under ask what you would like to do. On the Hill, people are very busy. Out of session days are much more quiet than in session days. Here at the Heritage Foundation, when there's a big event that is one of our policy priorities, it's kind of all hands on deck. So be aware of when you are asking for things. If we've just released a paper on big tech, maybe that's not the best day, week, month to ask the person in the big tech department out for coffee. So be strategic in your timing. As Morgan rightly pointed out, that's sometimes the most valuable commodity. Don't start at the top. I mean, I've heard two different strategies of this. If you wanted to ask your congressman who you are working for out for coffee, maybe the best way to do that is to talk to your scheduler to see if that's something that can be put on his calendar, instead of putting him in the awkward position of having to say yes or no to you on the spot when he's not really aware of those things. Or talk to your intern supervisor of, hey, can I organize this particular one? I'll pick up the bagels, I'll pick up the coffee. Can we just have 20 minutes to chat with him about his career? So that's kind of the high level. On the lower level, sometimes you can work your way up. So talk first to the research assistant in your department, or to the staff assistant, to the press assistant, and say, hey, what's the best way to approach this person? After you, of course, talk to them about their careers, been very intentional about getting to know them, asking how you can help in the office, but also just being interested in what that person is doing. So unfortunately in DC, there's networking is sort of a dirty word. You can become too strategic in how you use, in a sense, other people to get to other people. So I don't mean it in that way. You're not trying to like build a lily pads to jump to the island. Be very intentional and sincere in the people that you are talking to, because there's so much experience to be learned from that. And honestly, the people at the lowest level is going to be where you're going to be next. So they're actually the most valuable people. They're often the person that's passing the resume to the chief of staff, or saying to the intern coordinator after they finish it, hey, I was an intern 2 semesters ago. This person would be a great fit for this job or this internship. So make sure that you're not just doing throwaway ones, and that you've looked up the person's bio, that you've taken time to read up on what they've done, that you're not going in and saying, so tell me about what got you to where you are, but rather saying like, I saw you did X, Y, and Z, and I'm really interested in that career path. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that? So don't go in having done none of your research either. And then I've been in some interviews that went super well, ended up building friendships and lifelong commitments. I've been in some ones that were really awkward and there just wasn't a fit, and that happens. The best thing to do is to know that you can end it at any time and just say, thank you so much for meeting with you. Like, this was great. I appreciate your advice, and make sure you send a follow-up thank you, but don't feel as if you need to stay in a situation that is super awkward or just not going anywhere, or if the person's really busy or has a bad day. And then I would just say, defer to that person's time. Don't take it personally if that person keeps rescheduling it. If someone keeps rescheduling, try to stay on their schedule by the time your internship expires, but don't think it's you. It's usually a lot of other factors outside of their control. And I would just take that as an opportunity to fill that time with a good talk with a friend, or catching up on your work, or reaching out to somebody else. And then definitely don't say, well, I don't want to do this particular job thing, so I'm not going to reach out to this person. You just never know what wisdom you can glean from anyone. And I would say, even at the Heritage Foundation, some of them have really amazing, impressive jobs, but there are also people here who have kind of like less sexy jobs, who have great stories and great advice. So don't just cut yourself off to kind of the end goal. Really focus on building friendships and learning the wisdom that so many people have.
Colleen brings up such a great point, which is that sometimes during these conversations, you don't really know how they're going. I remember having an interaction where I had an informational interview. I was graduating in May. And so that semester while I was interning on the Hill, I was getting informational interviews and coffees with every single Republican Ohio chief of staff on the Hill. And I remember the first one I did, I sat down, this guy, it was over in 8 minutes. The guy was like, okay, so tell me where you're from. Tell me what you've done. Okay, yeah, you get it. You're going to be fine. You'll find a job. And then that was it. And I was like, okay. He's the one who ended up calling me and was my chief of staff for 5 years. And he's who gave me my job in Mike Turner's office. So, never never be afraid to ask for the informational interview or coffee, but also never be put off, because sometimes people find out all they need to know about you in 10 minutes or less. And time is a valuable commodity. It's scarce. And just try to be as succinct with your elevator pitch as possible, I guess.
Great. Well, I have one final question for our discussion, but please start adding any questions that you guys have into the chat, and we'll be getting to those here shortly. But just a follow-up question from that last one. So you have some great informational interviews, or you've gotten to know some of the interns in your intern class really well. How do you maintain those relationships post-internship?
Yeah. How do you keep the network warm? That's a great question. And I think that that's the hardest thing to do, especially if you come here for an internship for the summer and then you have to leave and you're not in school here in DC, you're in school in your home state or another state, whatever it may be. So, I mean, we had students who came out for an internship and then flew back to California for a year. So how do you keep those connections warm when you know that eventually you're going to be graduating? You loved it here, you want to be here. I think that just checking in with folks, I would say about once a quarter, just it could just be shooting a note over to somebody. If you guys really enjoyed watching March Madness together in your office, shooting over a note about, hey, I just saw Kansas did XYZ, and it made me think of you. Hope you guys are doing well. Just keep them in a place where they're remembering who you are. I think the toughest thing as someone who had a lot of different intern classes when I was on the Hill that I managed was, even if I had a really stellar intern who was maybe like a sophomore, by the time they were a senior and about to graduate, if they didn't keep in touch, it was difficult for me to remember them. Whereas if you're checking in with somebody at least once a year, twice a year, something to that effect, like I said, I recommend shooting a casual note over once a quarter to the folks who you really think are going to be most helpful in finding your next job. I think it just makes such a difference in remembrance and recognition, rather than it being something where all of a sudden, I haven't heard from you since you walked out the door from your internship 3 years ago. And now you're saying, hey, remember me? I need a job now. And I don't remember you because I've had another spring, summer, fall class for the past 3 years. That's a lot of extra interns in that time. That's a lot of different faces. And a lot of them were probably a lot better than you were. So, you got to just understand how big the pool is of interns and make sure that you're staying in touch with these people so that you're not forgotten when you do get into a point where you're looking for a full-time job.
I'll just add on to that. It's sometimes difficult to find reasons to reach out to people. I think that the best way to think about it is in terms of events that happen in your life. So that means like graduation, or a paper that you published, or something that a professor discussed in class that you also discussed in an informational meeting with them, or perhaps an issue that your boss was working on and you've recently written a paper on it and want to share it with the office. So there are hooks, so to speak, about that. That can also be, it doesn't have to be work related. If you share an affinity for a football team or a basketball team, or you both love The Bachelor, those sorts of things can be a way to say, hey, did you see this? And send them the link into it. So funny, or really excited for the season ahead, or whatever it is, just to tell them that you've repersonalized that conversation and you're keeping it going. You might not receive a reply. They probably have opened it, but most of the times they'll be like, great, me too. Or, oh my gosh, did you see this? So you can keep the conversation going. So those are different ways in which you can engage with people, but also to just say, hey, saw the boss on Fox News last night. Remember my time helping with that issue. So glad to see that it's getting some traction, or love that their conservative values are getting out there. Missed my days in the office, or here at the Heritage Foundation, congratulations on the new president. You know, you can always find something that's a reciprocity, or to offer help, to say, hey, I'm remembering my internship fondly. I'm going to be in DC for an internship this year. If there are any other interns or academy participants that want to talk to someone about how they got to where they are, would love to give them some advice about how to work in that department. Our interns leave letters for the interns that come after them, kind of giving tips and tricks. That's a nice way to say, hey, how's the new intern doing? Did they get my letter? Those sorts of things are a really good way to connect as well. So as time goes on, there'll be more or less things that you do, and some of those relationships will naturally fall aside. But if you've done the early cultivation work, chances are they will now remember you.
Wonderful. Well, you guys hit on so many great points, and yeah, if I were going to into my internship, I would feel super prepared. So thank you all so much for sharing all of that.